All right, guys. Okay, cool. I'm ready now. So, yes, welcome to the space. My name is Dumelo, and I write fiction. So I write fictional stories, and I publish them, and then I sell them. So this story that I'm going to read to you is from a short story collection that I've had. It's like not fully published. So I've published a few of the short stories as ebooks on a website, which I will share with you guys so that you can go check out the other short stories should you find that you like my writing and you want to read more of it. So the story that I'm going to read to you is titled Grief or Regret. And it's one of those stories I wrote quite a while back. So it is quite, I don't know, I seem to write very sad stories, but I do hope that after I've read the story, we may have some interesting discussions about the themes in the story and I back as to how you liked the way I packaged it, the pacing. We can talk about characters, who you liked, who you didn't like, how they connected with you, whether it was immediate or gradual. And yeah, so let's get to it. So it starts like with the prologue. Um, I am pregnant, Zuko said, with a tinge of excitement she had failed to suppress. It took me a moment to process what she had just said. Pregnant? No way. This woman, I'm some kind of fool. How can she stand there telling me that and expecting that I will not discover what she has been up to? Granted, she does not know about my condition, so she might actually believe that, of all her lovers, it must be me who has fathered her child. My hand lifted. The back of it came into contact with the side of her face, and she went down, flailing her arms to try and avoid the fall. There was a thud as she crashed on the wooden floor of the dining room of my house. Even as my hand had shot up, I had already changed my mind about striking her and tried to withdraw it. But the action had been started and refused to be ended midway. There were tears in her eyes. I wanted to help her get up, so I bent forward. I bent towards her and extended. She saw my hand approach and backed away from me, using her palms and buttocks to pull herself farther from me. Her jaw had started to discolor, and there was a cut on the side of her bottom lip. Those lips were trembling, but there were no sobbing sounds emerging therein. Her eyes were filled with unshed tears. She looked stunned and petrified. I wanted to apologize, but my anger would not let me. Do you think that I'm happy about that? I asked her, my voice low and hoarse. She just blinked from where she was, against the wall that had stopped her escape. She sat there, hunched over, hiding her face between her now raised knees. I wanted to tell her that she could relax, that I was not going to hit her again, but she seemed to flinch with every word I uttered, and if I tried to approach her, she would let out a pained sound, much like a dog would when feeling cornered by its master. Well, it's not my baby. You should go tell its father. This man you have clearly been cheating on me with. I waited for her to say something, and when nothing was forthcoming, I took her silence to mean I was not wrong. I continued coldly. I am going for a walk. When I get back, I don't want to see you here. Pack your rags and get out of my house for good. I turned to leave and slammed the door hard behind me. This caused the windows to rattle and a slight trembling of the house. I opened the gate and walked through. and then I stopped because I was not sure what I wanted to do. I decided to go for a run, even though I was not really dressed for it. I started off in the direction of the park, and as I ran, I was met by no one, just the cars speeding by on a residential road. I liked this neighborhood because it was so quiet and minded their own business. When I reached the park, I slowed down and looked for a place to sit. Thankfully, there were no kids playing at this time, so I would not have to worry about being mistaken for a child predator. I went for a large maple tree and sat down. I propped myself against against its trunk. It was somewhat of a nippy spring afternoon. The whistling wind was a bother and made my cheeks feel cold because of the tears I had let flow unchecked. I could not get over her betrayal. The one woman I had been unwaveringly faithful to had thrown my love and devotion back in my face. I knew she could not understand how much she had hurt me with that statement. My thoughts took me back to the reason I was so sure that the child was not mine. While still a student at Wits University, I had shared a taxi with this older woman who had just decided to pour her heart out to me. At the time, I had not known how to react to such intimate details of a stranger's life. All I remember was my need to help assuage this woman's sorrow. We exchanged numbers because I had offered her an ear whenever she felt that she wanted to talk to someone removed from the situation. She took me up on that offer, and I found myself spending hours on the phone talking to the woman. Months passed, then one day she asked to see me at her home. I was not sure what I was expecting, but when I got there, she told me that she had a big favor to ask me. Thinking nothing of it, I said in response, "Of course, anything I can do to help a friend, I am more than happy to do." And so she asked me to get her pregnant. Flummoxed, I was not sure how to respond, but at the same time, I did not want to hurt her by refusing when I had just agreed to help. And so we embarked on a mission to get her pregnant. Of course, oh, excuse me. Of course, it did not hurt that I derived pleasure from this activity that had no strings attached. At 22, my libido was quite high and I was eager to please. Confiding in a friend only served to egg me on, as this friend expressed envy at not being the one to land upon such good fortune. For many months, this woman and I were at it every week. In the beginning, excuse me, in the beginning. And when the results seemed to be taking their time to materialize, we made it a daily ritual. On weekends, it was an affair that took many repetitions and many creative gestures to increase the spontaneity and reduce the pressure to produce the results. She consulted specialists because naturally we assumed that the problem lay with her until one of the specialists asked her to bring her partner so he could examine him. I was so sure that it was not me that I agreed without even thinking about it. This specialist told me that I had very low sperm count and that was the reason for the lack of success. He put me through therapy to try and determine how much sperm I released during sex. First, he asked me to use a condom the next time we had sex and bring that to him as soon as we were done. And then he asked us to have sex in one of the test rooms at his offices, as he wanted to make sure that there would be little time delay condom being delivered. After that, he asked me to use pornographic videos to masturbate into a dish he had supplied. He ended up sending me for a second opinion, woman specialist in his network, and she reached the same conclusion. My sperm count was abnormally low, and the chances of me impregnating a woman were less than 10%. I was devastated. The woman, equally so. I could not face her after that because I felt that I had failed her. I suddenly felt like half a man. I went on a sexual binge, trying to prove to myself that I was not what they had said, a man who could not have children. I thought that if I slept with enough women, I was bound to make one of them pregnant. I became obsessed with it, dating women for no more than 3 months at a time, as I told myself that 3 months was enough time for the woman to fall pregnant and tell me. After 4 years of doing this, I decided to accept that it was indeed true. I felt the weight of this condition even more when I thought about the fact that I was an only child to parents who were aging. I was supposed to carry on the family name. At 34, I met Zugo, and for some reason I felt different about her. I wanted to marry her because, even though I knew I could not have children, somehow being with her made that seem not so important. I was even willing to discuss any arrangement to have children if she really wanted them. I would ask my cousins to donate sperm, and we would consult a fertility clinic and do that in vitro thing. I had not wanted to sleep with her until we were married, but she was relentless and finally wore me down 2 months before this day. Our union was explosive. From then on, I could not get enough of her, and she was all too willing. In hindsight, I thought that I should have asked how far along she was, as that would have proven once and for all that she had wanted to pass off another man's pregnancy on me. She must have fallen pregnant and was desperate for us to be intimate before she began to show. Otherwise, then I would find her out. Little did she know that her plan was never going to work anyway. I do not know how long I sat there, wallowing in self-pity. When I got back home, sure enough, she was gone. We were not living together, and she had arrived the previous night for a weekend visit. I wanted to cool off first before I called her to try and make amends. I knew that I would not be able to let her go so easily. Accepting that someone had cheated and carrying on with them was not an easy decision. I decided to see if after a week I would be calm enough to talk to her without losing my temper. I did not want to hit her again. I was crying with one eye. There was a steady throb on the right side of my face where he had struck me. You think a person after dating them for over 2 years. I wondered if the signs were there all along and I had chosen to ignore them. His reluctance to get intimate with me before we married was something I thought was chivalrous. He was old-fashioned and sweet, I thought. Maybe it was a mechanism to control his abusive nature until after we were married. Perhaps being intimate with a woman made him feel more vulnerable to acts of jealousy. And what did he mean it was another man's child? I pride myself on being a one-man woman. How could he be so sure it wasn't his? Was all that marriage talk a farce? Surely my being pregnant did not take away from our relationship. Did he feel pressured? That I was trying to force a marriage on him he was not ready for? And when was he going to be ready for anyway? The man was 36 for Pete's sake. At 33, I was feeling the pressure of a ticking clock. The pregnancy was a surprise to me too, but not an unpleasant one. The man had starved me of intimacy for 2 whole years. I was no saint or virgin. Unless this was an immaculate conception, he was the father. Clearly, he did not want to have children, and that in itself was a peculiar thing. When was he expecting to start a family? He had a nice big house in the upper class suburbs of the province. He held a senior position in an investment firm and drove an expensive car. He did not have any major debts she was aware of, not that she had intimate knowledge of his finances. Most people were married with kids approaching their teens. His parents were also quite aged. Surely he wanted them to see their grandchildren before they died. It was all so very confusing. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe I was trying to find excuses for him, a reason to go back to him when a clear warning had just been revealed to me, before things had progressed to the point of no return. I was free to walk away. At work, I had been offered relocation to the UK for 5 years, working at their branch there. I had hoped that he would help me make the decision, and as much as it was not help in the direction I had hoped for, he had most certainly helped me. I would take that position. I would email my manager and inform her of my acceptance first thing Monday morning when I got to work. I decided. There, the decision was made. Now I just needed to contact an agent about putting my simplex for rent and moving my furniture into storage. I was going to put in leave for 3 weeks and tell my manager that I needed it to spend time with my parents before I made the final arrangements to leave, since the company wanted me to move there in 6 weeks' time. I planned to ask for the week after, and when I got back, I would have 2 weeks to get everything arranged for my departure. I was getting excited. The stress of that morning's encounter temporarily forgotten. I decided to call my sister for a chat. Hello? Was the response from the other side. Hey, it's me. Are you busy? I asked Zizi, my younger sister and best friend. No, I was just about to make lunch, but that can wait. What's up? Well, I have news. I paused and Zizi made a frustrated sound over the phone. Must you always need a drum roll to share stuff with me, Zuko? Her irritation unmasked, she breathed a sigh into the receiver. Okay, don't get upset. I made the request into a question, and when there was no agreement from my sister, I prompted, Promise me, please. Okay, she relented. Another sigh was made over the receiver. I'm pregnant. I found out last week when I went to the gynae after being late 3 whole weeks. I told Zweli this morning and he flipped, told me it wasn't his and whoa, was the interruption from Zizi. What does he mean it's not his? I could tell she was incensed. I don't know. Don't interrupt. Anyway, he hit me when I told him and told me to leave his house and never come back. At the memory, I became emotional once again, and as much as my sister could not see the tears, she could hear my sniffles over the receiver. He did what? Listen, I'm coming over, she commanded. But Zizi, it's a 2-hour drive. I don't care. This is not something that can be talked about over the phone. And she dropped the phone before she could hear any more of my voiced protests. 2.5 hours later, she was buzzing at the security access control gate. I buzzed her in, then went to meet her outside on the veranda. She parked in the guest carport and alighted the vehicle. She approached the boot, grabbed her bag, and then came to hug me. Although I would not admit it out loud, I was glad that Zizi had. It was Saturday and she would drive back the following afternoon. We would have enough time to have a heart-to-heart. Tears formed once more in my eyes in anticipation of the TLC that was coming. Zizi was younger than me. She was wiser and motherly. She knew just what to do to make me feel better. So that bastard hit you on your face, huh? Was the angry question as soon as we sat down. Seated on my L-shaped sofa, I poured my heart out to my sister. As I talked, Azizi made sympathetic sounds and angry sounds and incredulous sounds in all the right moments of my story. And you know how faithful I was to him, despite his insistence that we wait for marriage before we become intimate. I mean, 2 years of my life. And then it was like I had unleashed something in him. He could not get enough of me. When did he think I had time to sleep with other men? A sob escaped from me on this last bit. Listen, babe, I know you and I thought this guy was a dream, but we were wrong. I know you are hurting, but don't let his issues become your issues. Whatever he is smoking, let it not make you high. She put an emphasis on the you. He is a loser, and it's a good thing you found out now. It was a good idea for you to force him to sleep with you before you guys got married. Things could have been worse. You are an independent woman and you can raise this baby and give it a good life without him. One day you will meet a man who will fall in love with both of you. Until then, don't let this baby suffer another of his father's stupidity. And we hugged. When we broke apart, while wiping my eyes with the back of my hand, I decided to tell Zizi about my decision to move to the UK. So I'm going to apply for leave to go to be with Umama no Tata for 3 weeks. And then middle of November, I will be off. Zizi was in total agreement with this plan. I think this opportunity could not have come at a better time for you, Zugo. Some distance from this guy will do you good, and maybe you will meet an Irishman who will make you forget all your troubles. I smiled at that, thinking about my sister's obsession with Irishmen in their country. You an Irishman though, Zizi. What? The world is no longer closed to us, Zuko, and the heart wants what it wants. Well, at least you will come visit me and maybe meet one of your own Irishmen to last after. And we both giggled. Nah, if I go there, I am never coming back. Hi, Ziz, don't be crazy. What about Umama no Tata? Hi, wait. I will come visit. Chini, are you hungry? I remembered that Zizi had been about to make lunch when I had called her earlier. Yes, let's go make something decadent, was her response. Okay, so that is the end of the prologue, and basically, I don't know if anybody wants to request the mic, and we can discuss a little bit about what has emerged so far before I read some more. Also, if anybody is struggling to hear me, I really don't know, and I sort of can't see if you guys are maybe, sending emojis through while I'm reading, because I sort of focus, I guess, on what I'm reading, so I don't really get to see the phone screen. So I would like to invite anybody and everybody who would like to be speaker and discuss some of what I've said, for example, the characters or the themes. And so if you can just maybe do that now before I maybe continue and read the next portion, so that I can take care of that now, because I might not see your request when I begin reading again until I stop. So yes, Ausmatiki has requested the mic, and I believe, is it first employee? Okay, and first employee. So welcome Ausmatiki and welcome first employee. So thank you so much for requesting the mic. I will then give you a chance to, if you would like to introduce yourselves to the listeners, tell us just a little bit about you as a reader. So, what makes you love reading, and when did you start reading? So we'll start with you, Ausmatiki, and then we'll go to first employee. And then afterwards, if you guys have any questions, you can ask, and then I will read the next portion of the story. So Ausmatiki, over to you.
Hey, Mechulu, and everybody else. Good afternoon. Under the assumption that it's not everybody who speaks Sesotho, I guess I'll hang on to the foreign language. Fascinating, but not surprising. Your characters. I kind of like joined in while you're already in the reading process, so I missed the guy's name. And this is directed since first employee has already requested the mic, but this is also directed to the guys on the space. I've always been Kimateke from Lesotho. I started reading, oh my goodness, I can't even remember. I'm an introvert, so books have always been my escape. So to put a specific time, I would say maybe when I was 10, my earliest recollection. I probably started reading at 10. Fortunately, I had a mother who had an appreciation for reading material, so there were always, there was always stuff to read in the house. And I think it was specifically meant for me because I was I was so socially awkward. But I would really be greatly immersed in reading. So I think it was just her frustration in responding positively to realizing that I was socially awkward, being an introvert. So I have always loved reading. It's unfortunate that lately I am not into this kind of reading. I do mostly academic reading, which is usually boring. I hate it. I don't enjoy it, but I have to do it. So Mechulu, thank you very much for this. I jumped on when I saw the invitation, like, yes, I could do with something different. So yeah, my curiosity with your reading about men who refuse the responsibility of paternity, that has always been my curiosity. Like, what goes on inside the man's heart? I don't think it's a hate thing. Well, maybe because they call themselves logical, they might want to respond to a logical inclination. I don't know, but that has always been my curiosity. Like, when you come up with a character like this one who responds this way, but my interest really is about denial of paternity, which is one of the most common things when men are faced with a predicament of premarital pregnancy. So, but otherwise, I think the way you have just articulated and read through the piece, it's just fascinating. I was drawing a picture in my head as the sisters are sitting and, kind of like holding each other. It was such, and the Irish, I laughed because at one particular time in my life, a friend of mine recommended that I go out with an Irishman, and the conversation sounded just so similar. So that was kind of like, the light moment there. So thank you very much for helping me reminisce on the private side of my life. But yeah, that's what I think for now. I'm curious to hear what you'll be saying in the next piece. I kind of like joined this one in the middle of the reading, so I might not be as productive or as inquisitive as I should be. Thank you.
All right. No, thank you so much, Asmatike. And I always find it so enjoyable to like discover how people discovered or fell in love with reading. It always is such a special story, and yours is just as I mean, it's beautiful, especially when you've had a parent loved reading. Then you are just one of those people because it comes to you very early in life. So thank you so much for sharing. First employee.
Good afternoon, everybody. For the opportunity to speak. Actually, interesting book. I also just caught, I think, about the first 10 minutes, actually the last 10 minutes of your reading, which actually got me to end up just switching off the TV. I'm like, this is interesting. I need to be listening to this. And then, personally, I'm one of those people. I'm a part-time reader. I just find myself, because most of the time when I'm at work, I work long hours, and sometimes I usually just drag a book with me. And then when I feel like I need a bit of time out at work, I would just grab a book, read for about 20 or 30 minutes, and then afterwards just put it away. And then it would take a couple of days until I go back to it and all that. But interestingly enough, I can actually relate to what you're talking about in the book, because sometimes as men, I'm going to talk, especially when Memateke actually asked about why do men usually ignore or just deny paternity when it comes to their kids, or even to pregnancy with somebody that they've been dating. Sometimes I just think that our level of maturity as men sometimes fall behind. I don't know why, but we are very active when we actually engage in the act itself. But when we need to be matured enough to own up to our responsibilities, we find ourselves always trying to shy away from taking responsibility for things that we have done. And then it puzzles me in some way, because I actually had my baby daughter at a very, let me say, I can't say young, because I think I was 27. By then, I actually understood what I was doing. As much as I didn't, sometimes you just get to a point where you just feel like you love this person so much. You just feel like everything is just going so well. And then jiggy jiggy things happen, and you guys are there, and then you guys have a baby. And then maybe I was lucky enough because I was raised by both parents, and I understood the importance of actually sticking around for what's mine. And it was always a matter of saying, as long as somebody's life is in the picture because of me, I am going to be responsible for it. Yes, it's difficult, because by then, you're just a young boy just thinking, ah, I can still go groove, I can still go do this, I can still go do that. But in the process, you realize at some point that, hey, all that needs to fall to the side. There is now a priority and then that priority is actually a part of your life. You know, it was a bit of a ball game until I said with my father, and I'm like, me and my dad were very close. At some point, my mom would actually think we were just two buddies sitting there talking a whole lot of rubbish, because most of the time she would say to us, "You guys never do anything. You always sit under the tree and just talk a whole lot of rubbish. We see you laugh, but when you get into the house, you guys are serious." Those type of things. So I sat with my dad and I'm like, dude, tell me, how did you manage being the father that you are? How did you go around dealing with, firstly realizing that, hey, you had a firstborn, you had a secondborn, and you ended up having me, the last born of the house, which I'm currently the fifth child. How did you deal with all these dynamics in between? And he said to me, there is no book to such. The most important part is me and your mom were able to discuss each and everything, even at times that we didn't agree on certain ways of doing things. We always found a way around it, and it always worked. That's why even at this age, you see us still being together and still being able to have a happy family with you guys. So I would really love to listen to the rest of the book, or if you're gonna have to read the whole book. I'm sitting here just anxiously waiting, and then it's interesting. Honestly, it's interesting. It just it just actually changed my whole Sunday. I'm going to sit here and listen to you read the rest of the book. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. No, thank you so much. Thank you for agreeing to be an active participant. And yes, I plan to read the whole story because it is a short story. It's not a typical short story, because like I mean, it's probably on the other side of like 7,000 words. So usually short stories are like 2,000 words, 1,500 words. So this is simply a short story because I guess I write longer stories, such as novels and novellas and stuff. So it would probably like qualify as a novelette, this one, because it's about 68 pages, of which maybe something like 64 of them are the story itself, and the others are just the copyright information and stuff like that. So it is one of the ebooks that I've published on a website. I've got other short stories there that I've published as well. So if you like this one, then probably you will also enjoy the others. So you can go and check them out on that website as well. So yes, let me read the next part. So what I had read was the prologue. So the next one, the chapter or that section is called Grave Matters. Okay, so it goes like this. I was nervous. After so many years had passed since that fateful day, it was really unfair that life had placed me in this situation. But I had no other choice. Zweli remained the best chance for Aiden's survival. I spotted Zizi in the crowd of people waiting for their loved ones to walk through the arrivals hall at the airport. I wished that I had not insisted on doing this alone. Having Angus, my husband of nearly 18 years, would have helped, but I did not want to provoke Zweli and make him hostile. I hugged my sister, whom I had not seen in over 2 years, and then we made our way out to the drop-off zone, where her husband and children were waiting for us in the car to keep it from getting clamped, as would be the case if you left your car at the zone with no one to keep the Metro police officers from it. Zizi had not married an Irishman after all, but had instead fallen in love with the Xhosa guy she met through work. They had 2 sons, Mbulelo and Yonela. Seeing the boys made me miss my girls even more. They all got out of the car to hug me and help us with the bags. I was planning to stay for 3 weeks, and I hoped that it would be enough time to convince Zweli to help Aiden's life. So, how was your flight? Asked Zizi from the front seat. I was seated in the back seat with the boys. Yonela was seated in the middle and kept looking at me and smiling. It was long and tiring. I could not even catch any sleep during those 11 hours. This whole situation with Aiden has got me all tied up in knots. He is being so brave, and all I'm doing is breaking down every time I see him. He has become so weak and thin looking, and you know that he is normally without much weight, and now he looks like a skeleton. I finished off on a sob, and Yonela scooted closer to me and tried to put his arms around me. I saw tears in his eyes and felt like such an awful person to hurt him with my tears like this. He was only 9 years old, but seemed to possess wisdom beyond his years. He had a sweet look, taking others' features, while Mbulelo was a miniature version of his father. At 11, he was already of the view that boys don't cry and kept giving his little brother a disapproving look. Come now, Sissy. Don't do this to yourself. Have faith in the goodness of people's hearts. I'm sure Zweli will understand and help out. He has surely changed since you last saw him. Age can soften his heart. I should know. This was Mncedisi, Zizi's husband, dispensing a man's perspective to the situation. I clung to little Yonella's offered comfort and kept depositing little kisses on his forehead and hair. Ncedisi is right, Zugo. People change. I imagine he regrets the way he handled things with you that day. Zizi added to what her husband had already said. Of course, none of us knew that my sister knew something about how Zweli felt about the way he had handled things. She knew that Zweli would be more than happy to see me, having relentlessly pestered her to where I was, and she refusing him every time. The rest of the drive was had in silence, as each of us was arrested by our own thoughts. Even the boys respected the unspoken rule of silence. When we got to their lovely home, Ncedisi made himself scarce, and the boys disappeared into their rooms to play their video game. So Zizi had a heart-to-heart. We made tea and took some scones from her guest's supply, then sat down on the veranda. It was soothing to watch the sea in the distance, dancing tune of the light breeze. Moving to the coast had been the best decision my sister and brother-in-law had made. So, when did you guys move here? Just before Mbu started school. It was a challenge for me to find work this side, so we ended up moving before I could even find one, because Mbu was just growing up and not waiting for me to get a job. At least Ncedisi owns his own business, which he can operate from anywhere, so it was not a hard decision to make. I was also glad to get away from Zweli and his harassment. This last statement, I imagined, was a thought Zizi had not realized that she had voiced loud. I pounced on her. What? Zweli was harassing you and you didn't tell me? I was incensed. Don't take it so far. I don't mean harassment like that. I mean that he would come to my work and ask me where you were. Come to your work? But Zizi, why did you keep all this from me? It was harmless. I never felt threatened. Besides, I was not about to tell him how to find you. How did he know where you worked? Do you remember all those double dates we used to go on before you left? When I used to sometimes be the third wheel? When my date would stand me up? Well, Zweli and I would talk shop when you were away from the table because we didn't know what else to talk about. I mean, I didn't want him to be my friend in case things didn't work out between you two. Oh, well, I guess that was a good call. Maybe it was a gut feel and you just didn't know it. The only thing that kept me from coming back and trying to work things out with him was the fact that he had hit me. That scared me witless. There were times, even after I met Angus, I would think of coming back to him because my heart would just not let him go. I would ask myself, how could I not have realized he was violent throughout all that time? And maybe it was a one-time thing. And I would think about Aiden and how his life was going to be difficult without his father in it. I drifted off. My thoughts were all over the place. Thinking about that time still made me sad. I never had proper closure. And I always wondered if I had not caused things to escalate to that point by not respecting his wishes not to get intimate. I heard Zizi say, "But Angus makes you happy, right?" She sounded worried to my ears. Perhaps she felt guilty about keeping Zweli in the dark about where I was and not giving him a chance to make amends. "Yes, of course," I said absent-mindedly. My thoughts had drifted to steamy sessions I had had with Zweli. As a lover, he was very thorough and a bit rough, but I had not minded. Angus, on the other hand, he was gentle and selfless. Zweli could be selfish in bed and think nothing of my dissatisfaction, while Angus always made sure I was content. Even as a father to Aiden and the girls, he was always so patient with them, doting on them, and sometimes defending their mischief. Because I could not give him a son, Aiden seemed to fill the gap quite well, and the two of them were very close, So close the girls were jealous sometimes of all the time he spent with their brother. Papa loves Aiden more than he loves us, Mama, Caitlin had once complained. I was not really sure how to respond to this voiced dissatisfaction of a little girl in her father's affection. So I said, "No, darling, I think that Papa understands Aiden more than he understands you, because both of them are boys. Maybe you should tell him that girls enjoy doing things that boys like doing." I don't really know if that made Caitlin feel better, but Angus suddenly started including her in some of their outings and the games they would play. Now that she was a teenager of 15 and wanted less attention from her father and brother, she was annoyed that she had instigated it in the first place. She could not sneak away anywhere without either of them noticing. This made dating a challenge, and she liked this one awkward boy who lived a few from us. City life forces kids to grow up so fast sometimes. It can't be easy, what you have come here to do. It must feel like groveling. Zizi was voicing yet more thoughts as she broke into mine with those words. Yes, it does. How can life be so unfair? Shouldn't it have been the other way around? He should have been the one needing Aiden to save his life and having to grovel while eating his words. My heart was murmuring and I could feel my mood change. I felt bitter about how things had turned out. I was not the one to reject him, and yet here I was, getting ready to grovel. Mama, I am hungry. Yonela disrupted our pity party, just in time to save us from further berating ourselves over life. His eyes darted between us. He was not sure if we had heard him. Where is your brother? Zizi finally said. In his room. He said he was not hungry, so why should he have to make food? Go tell him that I said he must make you a sandwich. We will eat out for supper tonight. Okay, Mama. He reluctant to leave. While we still sat there waiting to see what would happen, Bulelo came out and slammed his bedroom door on his way to the kitchen. He had to go past the living room, out of where the veranda was, to get to the kitchen, and he mumbled his complaints all the way there, banged things in the kitchen as he made his brother a sandwich, and then emerged with it and placed it on the coffee table. His mother chose to say nothing through it all and instead called Yonela to come and get his food. Thank you, Mama, he said as he grabbed the side plate with 4 sandwiches and disappeared up the stairs to his room. Zizi called Netis and told him he needed to come home and talk to his son about his bad behavior. When did Mbu get like this, though? I asked. In my mind, he had always been the cute little boy who was shy and liked to smile whenever I looked at him. I could not remember seeing him smile since meeting them at the airport. I could also not remember Aiden being this way when he was Mbulelo's age. Caitlin had always been the hellraiser. I don't know. One day he woke up and he was like this. His grandparents say that he is just like his father, so I figure he must deal with it since it is his karma and not mine. I laughed and it sounded hollow. Zizi's laughter was more boisterous, indicating that she was enjoying herself. So, we will leave day after tomorrow, she continued. I have booked us a room at some bed and breakfast not far from his house. You need to rest. Take a nap so that you will be fresh for supper tonight. I'm not cooking, so if you feel like staying home, you will have to cook. I mounted the stairs and peeked into the first room that was open, which was the second room from the stairs. It was Yonela's room, and he looked up with a mouth full of bread. Don't worry, my angel. I was just looking for my room. Carry on. And I moved to the next room, which was separated from his bathroom. It was sparsely furnished, a bed with light blue bedding, and a headboard with 2 small sideboards. There was a 3-door wardrobe, and my bags were stacked up against it. I opened the smaller bag, which had my comfortable clothes, and slipped into a t-shirt and track pants. At 52, I no longer cared to keep up with hair trends, so I was always wearing something on my head. I took a throw that was folded and thrown on the only chair in the room, which was made from wicker, and I decided to sleep on top of the covers. I fell asleep within minutes of laying my head down. Okay, so that was the end of the second section of the story. I see we've somehow lost first employer. What a pity, really, because he wanted to listen to the story. I hope whatever it is that caused an interruption will be resolved and he will come back and hear more of the story. So, yeah, I don't, Smatiki, do you have any thoughts, any questions before I read the next section? Does anybody else want the mic?
No, not quite. I don't know what happened to my trail of concentration. Kind of like I really was listening actively. I don't know if it has anything to do with that I missed the first part of the story and caught it in the middle. So trying to connect the two sisters and Zweli and the children was kind of like a bit confusing in my head. So yeah, no, I don't have anything to say now. But let me think about it. Maybe I'll come back. Let me try to process it.
All right. Okay. No, that's fine. Let me continue reading. I guess if anybody would like to request a mic and say something, we can maybe take care of that after I read the next section. And yeah, and then discuss some more. So hopefully also anybody who's lost connection will have come back. Yes, so this next one is called Broken Things. There was a knock on the door, so one of the children ran to answer it. I could hear the interaction between the stranger and the child. Hi there, was the stranger's voice. I thought the voice sounded familiar, but I had to wait for more interaction. Hi, was the response from the little one. Is this Mr. Zweli Mkhweja's house? Was the stranger's next probe. There could be no mistake about the way that woman said my name. But could it be? From where I was sitting, I made a move to stand, but instead I stopped, mid-motion, and stood suspended between sitting and standing. Yes, the child confirmed. Can you please call him to the door? Was the stranger's request. The stranger I now believed to be Zugo. My hands felt clammy all of a sudden, my throat dry, and my voice took on a hoarse texture as the child said that someone was looking for me at the door, and I told her to go play in the back garden. I needed to compose myself in case it was her. But if it was her, why had I not heard a car approaching? Maybe I was just mistaking this person's voice for hers because I have wanted for so long to hear it. The child had left the door ajar, and I could not make out the features of the person on the other side of it as I approached. I pulled it open wider and got winded when I saw that it was indeed her. I gripped the door handle with force to keep from wobbling. It was really her, and she was not alone. Her sister was with her. Hello, she said, and I felt the vibrations of that greeting in my belly. At 55, I was no young stud, but she still had the power to render me weak-kneed. She was looking young, considering she should be about 52. She had a different air about her. Her facial features seemed more pronounced. I had not realized that I was just standing there, staring at them for a long time. To me, time stood still. As I stood there and took all of her in with my eyes, as dormant feelings were awakened inside me, and I could do nothing to stop them. My face felt warm, and the feeling of wetness in my hand was once again there. I was blocking the way, and when I realized, I made and gestured for them to come in as I answered their greeting. "How are you?" she said after they had both crossed the threshold. I wondered if they thought this was normal, that showing up like this at my house, unannounced, was something they considered as anything other than an ambush. What would they have done if they had found that someone else lived here now? I decided to adopt their nonchalant attitude too. "I'm well, thank you. How are you?" "Can't complain," she said. I noticed that her sister just watched and said nothing. Maybe she was still upset about our last encounter. I was not about to entertain this for any extended period, so I cut to the chase and said, in a rather peachy voice, "What brings you by after so many years?" We were still standing by the door. I had somehow forgotten my manners. "Do you mind if we sit down someplace and talk? We've come on a rather delicate and grave matter." Delicate? Grave? What could she possibly mean by that? "Yes, of course, forgive me. I am still in shock, that's all. We can go to my study." Once we were seated in my study, off from the rest of the house, I decided to defog my understanding of the purpose of their ambush. "You said you had a grave matter to discuss?" "Yes, I'm really sorry to come like this. It was never my intention to ambush you like this, but somehow I feel like that is how you see this, and that is how it is." It was like she had read my mind. "Anyway, you and I parted on rather the most unpleasant of terms, but I have not come here to disrupt your life out of some rapacious desire to seek revenge. The child that you and I made." I was about to interrupt her when she raised her hands to stop me. "Please let me finish, just this once," and I gestured for her to continue. "Is now years old and very sick. He has a condition which needs a transplant. His situation has become desperate in the last 6 months, such that we can no longer wait for a match that will come via the organ donor program, as that takes time. That the best chance for most patients in his condition is to find a donor within the family, and since none of them were a match for him," she drifted off. I was aware that she had become emotional early on during our conversation, and now that I had heard what the situation was, I understood why she had come like this. She had probably been afraid that if she'd contacted me first, I would not have listened to her, and maybe I would have even refused to hear her out. Her sister decided to take over at this point. "Do you still believe Aiden is not your son?" she asked. "Is that his name?" I asked, wondering what kind of new age name that was for a Xhosa boy. "His other name is Mxolisi, but where he lives, no one is able to remember it, let alone pronounce it. Aiden is his Irish name." "Irish? Why does he have an Irish name? Or why does it have to be Irish? Sorry. She wasn't making any sense to me. "Okay, let me start with this. When Zugo left, after your falling out, she went to live in the UK, Dublin to be exact. She met with an Irish man there and they got married while Mxolisi was still an infant. His name is Angus O'Hagan. And so he adopted Mxolisi and named him Aiden after his own father. Because no one else could say his isiXhosa name, it just remained unused, but it is still there on all his official documents. Anyway, now that you understand," I nodded, even though I was still saying. "Some 2 or so years ago, Mxolisi developed an acute kidney condition called acute renal failure. The specialist that saw him indicated that his condition was very bad and that the best thing for him was to get a kidney transplant. He could, however, put him on treatment while he waited for a viable kidney to become available, if no one in his immediate family could donate one to him. We all got tested, including me and my children, but none of us were found to be a viable match, and so he was put on the donor list. Some weeks ago, he stopped responding to the treatment, and they had to put him on a machine to stop him from dying. We need to test you and your relations to see if we can find a viable match as soon as yesterday, because with each day that passes, his chances of surviving another day get slimmer and slimmer. Zuko had left us by this time. I did not know where she had gone. I had wanted to follow her when I saw her getting up, but I was held to my seat by what Zizi was telling me. They seemed to believe that I was really the father. Were Zuko's other lovers not able to help? I knew it was a cold question to ask, but I was just feeling so unreasonable. I was still bitter about the fact that she had just disappeared, and this sister of hers had not wanted me where she had gone, despite my many attempts to extricate it from her. Listen, Zweli, we are not here to fight with you. I trust my sister, and if she says you are Aiden's father, then I know that you. She had reverted back to referring to him in that strange name. Why are you so sure that he's not your child? You have other children, do you not? The sting of that accusation and those words could not be denied by my heart. I flinched involuntarily. My sister was faithful to you, and you treated her badly. Aiden is an innocent child in all this. Why are you punishing him? How can I punish someone I don't know? I exploded. She had become the way she was that day when I almost lost my temper with her. I could feel the hatred emanating from her, from where I stood, in my indignation. Well, why are you not willing to consider the possibility that he is your son? She retorted. Listen, even if I wanted to consider that possibility. What do you mean, even if you wanted to? She interrupted me. Maybe if you let me finish, we might actually get somewhere, I said, with an unmistakable note of irritation in my voice. She was just pushing all my buttons. When I was in my 20s, I discovered that I have a rare condition that renders me incapable of having a child. I tried for years to impregnate women, random women, but none of them ever fell pregnant. Why do you think I was 34 and still unmarried when I met your sister? Did the fact that I did not have a baby mama not make you to wonder? After all, it was all and still is the norm for men to have children out of wedlock. Why would I be different? I realized that I was going to betray my emotions, so I stopped there. Well, we thought you were someone who had direction and respected women. We did not hold your seemingly good behavior against you. That made that made me want to scream in frustration. Not because what she was saying was unreasonable, but because they had believed me to be such a noble guy. And what a blow it must have been for me to turn out just like the rest. I had a really good thing and I blew it with my ego and bitter regrets about not being able to have a child. And now it sounded as though I could and I did. Listen, her voice had softened. Could we not just treat the situation with the urgency that it requires? And if you happen not to be related to him, the test that will be done will clarify it once and for all those concerned. How will you feel if you could have saved his life and you didn't, because you were still bitter about the past? She brought his DNA sample, and you can choose where to have the tests done today. By tomorrow, you will know for sure. All right, enough. You have made your point. My family knew not to disturb me when I put myself up in the study, but I wondered what they thought about all the noise. My cheating wife was not home, but her kids were. The eldest one, a girl, was always asking inappropriate questions like why I was not like other fathers or why I never wanted them to call me Dada or Baba or whatever. At 14, she was quite opinionated. I think that my wife cheated on me with her father because she was afraid that she was the one with the problem, and when she fell pregnant by that man, it was like she had found something to hold over my head. It proved that the lack of children in our 2-year marriage had not been her fault. Well, Zizi interrupted my turbulent thoughts. Yes, I will go get tested. Let me go find Zugo, I said. She did not argue. You can go sit in the living room if you like, I said to her as I left the study. I found Zugo watching the two younger children with such concentration. She was sitting on one of the wicker chairs that I had on the back veranda. The front of the house faces the street, so I prefer the back because I can sit and enjoy the breeze or sit in the shade without having to entertain greeting passers-by. And in the distance, there is a golf course where I can watch people play. I can also watch the kids play and make sure they don't break things. I pushed one of the other chairs closer to her and pushed the small table out of the way. I could see dry tears on her cheeks. I reached for her hand and she did not resist. She looked up at me and I saw also that there were unshed tears there too. What kind of a monster was I to bring so much pain to the one woman I knew I truly loved and still do? I faltered, and then I cleared my throat and began again. I am so sorry, Zugo. Zizipo explained things to me, and I have no words to express just how I feel at this moment. To know that I rejected my own son and the love of my life is a knowledge I do not know how to deal with. I am willing to do whatever is needed to help Golis. She just sat there and let me talk. Her face was slightly tilted towards me, and I saw myself lean towards it and touch my lips to hers. In the back of my mind, I wondered if the children were not seeing this, but I felt that I did not care. She moved closer. I don't know whether it was intentional or instinctive, but my lips lingered because she did not push me away. Instead, she groaned. I felt a burning stare before. I felt a burning stare before I lifted my lips from hers. I thought it might be Zizipo, but it was my eldest daughter. Where is Mama? She demanded, and I ignored her. So she insisted, Baba, I asked you if you know where Mama is. I knew that she knew where her mother was, so I said as much to her in response. Are you cheating on her? She had her hands on her hips. This child's attitude was unbelievable. Apam Danadin. It is bad manners to talk to adults like that and to put your nose in their business. This is a private matter, so why don't you go back in the house and do whatever it is you were doing? I'm going to tell Mama. And she walked away. I told her to take her sisters inside with her. I had traded a life with the woman I loved and a son for this. The punishment, it was on point. I apologized to Zugo about the child's rude behavior and continued to tell her that I was ready to go get tested and that if I was a match, I was willing to give Mkolisi one of my kidneys. I discovered that they were accommodated at a bed and breakfast down the road from my house, and that is why there had been no car. They had walked. We took my car and drove to the specialist they said the special island had spoken to about Mkolisi's case. The tests were very invasive and some even painful, but I was willing to die to make her smile again. I felt that there was not enough punishment in the world to make up for what I had done. The tests came back to say that I was a positive match. However, there was a problem. Due to my alcohol abuse, my kidneys and liver were not in a very good state. I was more than devastated. What should I do now? I called my cousins and begged them to help me, but they would not hear of it. It did not help that I had alienated my entire family, and both my parents were deceased. I asked the doctor if I could ask people who were not related to test, and he said yes. I would have to go beg that woman to get tested and let her children get tested too. I asked Zugo to give me a day to work something out. I dropped them off at the bed and breakfast and headed home. It was going to be an interesting 24 hours. I decided that I was going to just give orders and see if there would be any resistance. I was prepared to threaten throwing them all out on the street if they refused. The smell of food cooking was what greeted me as I made my way into the house. I had not realized that gone so long. Not sure if that insolent child had already shared with her mother what she had seen, in with my guard up. She was standing by the stove, stirring something in a pot. In all fairness, she was beautiful. Why could I not love her? She was a lot and slight in form, and she dressed to show off her slight frame. She loved to have the best life has to offer, and since she was not well educated, she had been more than glad that I was not expecting her to work. Hi, I said. I was standing on the other side of the chopping area, behind her. She paused what she was doing to turn my. She returned my greeting. She sounded down. I heard you had visitors today. Who were they? Clearly the girl had talked. I was going to ask her to do something for me. I decided it was best to be honest. It was the mother of my son and her sister. They had some said tell me my son is very sick and he needs a transplant. She had her back to me to refocus her attention to what she was cooking, I suppose, so I could not see how she was taking the news. You have a son? She sounded shocked. Yes, it turns out I do. I didn't know about today. I said this lie with a straight face because it was partially true until those tests came back to say that I was his father and also a matching donor. I had believed him to be another man's child. Another man had raised my son like he was his own, and yet here I was treating her daughters as if I could not be bothered. I guess this man who raised my son loves his mother enough to love and accept another man's child. White people were different, of course, to black people because they did not have rituals and such things as superstitions about ancestors. I went to do the test today to see if I could donate my kidney to him, but my kidneys are very weak at the moment, which does not help him. The doctor said we could ask other family members to come and get tested, so I thought you and the girls should go get tested. But why? We are not related to him. Perhaps, but you are related to me and he is my son. Are you saying that the girls are not mine? Well, that's not what I'm saying. Of course the girls can go get tested. That had gone easier than I thought. Perhaps you felt there was no need to worry because the girls were not related to Mxolisi and so they would not be eligible to donate. I decided to accept my good fortune. His name is Mxolisi, I offered. Oli will like that, having a brother with a name almost like hers, she said, and I had a feeling that it was a thought that had escaped the secret corners of her mind before she could stifle it. Oli, being the middle one, was the one child I found palatable. She was quiet and respectful. I had often heard her defend me to her older sister on several occasions. I would have liked her to have been my daughter, and maybe she is. After all, I had conceived a son, so maybe she was my baby too. I tested the waters. If one of the girls is a match, she will have to go to Ireland. That is where my son lives and where he is hospitalized. Oh, we go with her? She sounded thoughtful. Of course, she will need her parents there to look after her interests, make sure that they don't treat her like an organ vessel. All of a sudden, I was feeling protective over the girl that would be a match for my son. Even if she was not mine in blood, she would be mine because she would have saved my son's life, her brother. Now I was wishing that it would be Koliswa. She was only 12 years old and about to face a procedure that would affect her life forever. It was so unfair that I had ruined my kidneys with alcohol and now it was to correct things. Supper was a peaceful affair, and my eldest did not give me any attitude. I felt optimistic, and my dreams became testimony of that as I dreamt of my son and how I was meeting him for the first time. He did not look sick at all in my dream. He looked peaceful. He was sleeping in a hospital bed, recovering from the transplant. Sorry, I lost my way a little bit there. I wanted to call Zugo and tell her the good news when I woke up, but I did not know her cell phone number, and it seems I also did not have Zizipo's either. I decided that I would just freshen up and walk over to the bed and breakfast and tell them. The landline phone rang, and as usual, one of the children abruptly left their breakfast to go answer it. It was Oliso this time around, and she came to me and said, "They want to talk to you." And I said, "Thank you," and went to pick up the receiver. "Hello?" I said into it. "It's me, Zizi." Excuse me. "I just got word this morning that Aiden didn't make it through the night. He passed on early this morning. We are on our way to the airport, and we are about to leave as the transfer car is here. I thought I should let you know so that you don't put your kids through unnecessary pain. Thanks again for your willingness to help." There was a click before I could even formulate a response. I felt the sudden onset of a headache. I threw the receiver at the wall and put my hands on my head. I slumped to the floor. I felt my tears burning my cheeks as they built me. For 18 years, I had a son, and I never even got to see him. I felt myself getting angry at Zug. How could she do this to me? Why did she even come? Why did she take so long to come? Why had she run away? Was this her way of punishing me? Countless questions of anger and shame filled my mind. I should have offered to take them to the airport, I thought, but she had said that the transfer car was already there to pick them up. I decided to leave the house and go for a run, much like that day we had had a falling out. The difference now was that it was more like a brisk walk than an actual run. One I found myself headed for the park and the tree of long ago. It was like I wanted to go back in time and fix things. Like maybe if I retraced my steps, I could rewind and space and get back to that day when it had all started to go south. I will not cry, I kept saying to myself. Yet tears flowed unchecked from my eyes. If I allow myself to cry, I will never stop, and they will surely commit me to a mental institution. My children are still young. I have to be there for them. I found myself thinking about Aiden's father, the one who had raised him. How was I going to face him? I had raised all of our hopes, including my poor Aiden's. Why had I made the decision I made? Why had I not come to Zweli from the beginning? It was all weighing heavily on me, this death of a young and vibrant child. A child who would never know his real father. He was fortunate to have had Angus in his life, the man who had given him unconditional love. Before his illness, Aiden had begun to be a difficult young adult. He fought a lot with Caitlin and with me. It was like he could not stand any of us. Angus had discovered him having sex with one of the local girls there one afternoon. They were in his room, and he had been playing the music very loud. But as his father approached his room to tell him to take the volume down, he heard what he distinctly recognized as moaning sounds coming from within. The door was not locked because Aiden had somehow lost the key, and we had not called a locksmith to cut him a new one. Poor Angus was not prepared for what he was about to witness. They had not come in, and so they had carried on for some moments while he stood there, transfixed by what he was witnessing. Being a simple man, he only ever knew sexual exploits that took the form of the missionary position. Aiden was a heavy reader. He often spent hours at the library or in his room reading. He was bound to come across greater knowledge about human beyond the skies he could see. From that day onwards, stories had started to reach our ears of an emergence in the neighborhood of a rumor that Aiden had been discovered with many other girls in the neighborhood. He had built quite a reputation for himself as a sex fiend. Every girl wanted their turn to experience what they called the goosebumps maker. That we had both spoken to him about his behavior and tried to discourage it went without saying. We were outraged. I now find it hard to feel that outrage as I console myself with the knowledge that he had enjoyed some sinful pleasures in life. It's as if he somehow knew that he was going to leave this world before anyone would have even had the notion of such a thing happening. My thoughts moved back to Zweli, and I could not help but weep for him. He had finally accepted having fathered a child, and now he was never going to meet his son. He would never know Aiden's quirks, which were a charming part of his character. In the end, I had to go home and bury my son with the only family he'd ever known. Okay, so that is the end of that part, which was broken things. Now what is left is the last part, which is the epilogue. So I see I've lost Ausmatike as a speaker. I don't know if there's anybody who'd like to request the mic and speak, have questions, have comments about, yes, the storyline, the themes, and some feedback about how the story is so far. So please request the mic if you have that interest. Sukha, how are you?
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good too, Sukha. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, I don't know what to say. You you really always, like I've always said, you're a great writer, and some ways I was in another place while listening now, and yeah, I think the story is full of I don't know, emotions in a sense that I was always wishing it could go the other way, but it just kept on going. It's very unpredictable, and that is something that you always look out for when reading. So it's quite amazing, and the reading also is good. Yeah, I think it's time well spent, honestly, and I can only say good things. It's quite amazing. You know, yeah, it also. So I've learned as well from there. Also, I think that spent time after having listened to that and realizing that there's mistakes that men can make, or rather even women, that can really affect us. Because I'm just wondering what could have happened to the guy who thought that he's unable to impregnate a woman. Personally, having known a person like that myself, who made a similar mistake like that, but at least in his part it was quickly corrected. So yeah, there's just lots to learn from there. And also the alcohol part, quite amazing. Sorry, the baby's crying in the background. The alcohol part is also quite amazing, because I don't drink alcohol, but I find myself thanking myself when you mentioned that the guy couldn't donate a kidney because of the damage he's with alcohol. I was like, wow, okay, maybe it's good that I've never even been drunk in my life. So yeah, it's quite amazing. Thank you very much for this. Priceless, and this is the type of stuff that people pay for, but you are here giving it to us free of charge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sukham. Thank you so much for your feedback. And the baby is actually not bad. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm kind of used to children and their fussiness. So at least that cry doesn't tell me that the kid is in pain. It says to me that maybe he just wants some attention or he wants food or something like that. Because maybe somehow one has learned to recognize when a child's cry is from agony and stuff like that. But yes, thank you so much for the feedback, and I'm glad that the story is able to not just entertain you, but um I guess teach you some things or highlight certain things about life and choices that could be beneficial or detrimental. How's Matik?
We have a bit of a thunderstorm here, so if you hear stuff in the background, that's the storm, not me. Wow. This time I actually followed through, even though I dropped out for some reason. I don't know. That's when the rain was starting. But I actually enjoyed this piece. And what kept me thinking was, when you wake up and write a story like this, what would have triggered for you to think of such a storyline? It dips and climaxes and twists, and like By Black was saying, it was just so unpredictable in terms of the emotions and the reactions, and the end of it all. I was really hoping for a I was really hoping for a positive ending for something, and it caught me off guard to have ended like that. Happy still that Zweli came to his senses after such an emotional struggle. And I think one of the things that I noted as human beings, because these stories are really about ourselves. You will tell us how you came to write a piece like that, but it is also about these stories being about ourselves, being afraid of ourselves, being afraid of our vulnerability. And when much as I had asked the question about how Zweli, fell into the trap of paternity denial, it just kind of reminds me that men are much more vulnerable than we want to recognize. They are given so much responsibility, or so much is expected of them. And at any point when they recognize that they might not fit the mold that our society has placed them in, it becomes such a point of frustration that for Zweli, thinking that he could not have children, had such trauma in his psychic. It's very interesting, and for me, it's an issue of saying men and women go through the same emotions, through the same motions, because for women who can't have children, the reaction is the same, maybe more of public shame, while men go through private shame, which I think it might even be more stressful and more shameful, and hard to accept that you are less than a man. So at some point, I want to forgive Zweli for what he has gone through. At another point, I'm thinking society is doing so much harm to our men that we don't realize that we are actually nurturing monsters out of good men, or potentially good men. Because if Zweli, at some point came around and recognized and appreciated that he could have actually been a father, he was a father, such a regret. Who wants to go through such a regret? So it's just heartbreaking, because as people, as human beings, we have gone through, the story, regret in the choices that we have made, regret in the time we might have wasted, regret in that we could not allow ourselves to be vulnerable because we thought we were lesser, deserving of such compassion from the other person, because I forget these Xhosa names are tricky. The name, but yeah, it's a fascinating piece. I think for me, even though I may not have gone through this, but it kind of like resonates with some of the real stories that I know of people who went through so much pain and have lost so much just because they couldn't face their own vulnerabilities. So thank you, Mechulu. Nice piece. Really loved it. Thank you.
I am Mematiki. Thank you so much for listening. I have still the last to read, which is the epilogue. So the piece isn't finished yet. But yes, thank you so much for the feedback, for the thoughts. Really, I mean, the thing is, some of the reasons I guess we write stories is to try and maybe bring consciousness to some people, bring different thinking, ways of thinking, to how they may think something that doesn't feel harm because it does not immediately bring detriment to them, can bring about even more dire consequences later, which is something that, I mean, this guy was probably enjoying his life, abusing alcohol because he could afford to buy and drink as much as he wants. And maybe even some of his binge drinking had to do with all his regrets, and so he wasn't too worried, maybe even about eroding his life and dying early because maybe life just felt painful to him, due to that condition that he had, which seemed to now define his life and the choices he made since discovering that. So, yes. Hi, Dennis, how are you? Please, let's hear from you.
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm well, Dennis. Thank you for joining the space and for choosing to become an active participant in terms of speaker. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts? What would you like to say?
yeah, I really appreciate the stories. They are very inspiring. And one thing I like about these stories that they are eating the reality. You know, when you want to solve a problem or a situation, you must know the cause of the cause, and as you find a cause, there is a cause of that cause, and that's where they are heading. The problems in the society now are displaying such that people don't tell the real cause of that problem. But here we can get the reality, especially for us men. And I think that is it's a big step. And they inspire at least one person, and that one person goes inspires many. I really like that. Congratulations. That's all.
Okay, thank you so much, Dennis. That is it's great. It's good feedback. It's very encouraging. And I mean, I guess as a creative, as the industry itself has a lot of struggles, so sometimes one can feel despondent. But whenever one gets such feedback and such encouragement, it really does help because it makes you feel good. So it means that, it engenders a positive feeling towards the writing and the efforts that one to keep it alive and to keep it going. So thank you so much. Ausmatiki, in terms of your question about, I guess, how the conceptualization of such a story, I'm just going to answer it briefly, then I will read the epilogue, and then I guess we can then discuss more if there's a follow-up question, anybody else who also wants to jump in and give their thoughts. So with me, I think some things is maybe if like sometimes a story idea can come because something maybe that happens on a specific day reminds me of something that I already know about a condition that maybe I know about either through other people or is a like maybe let's say a more closer um like I'm more closer connected to it, for example. So, but in terms of the actual, like I may know that I want to tell a story that tackles certain themes or certain problems in society, but the story itself, I'm going to say something that probably sounds cliche now. The stories usually write themselves. The characters sort of form themselves in my mind and tell me what they are going through. So I just then write down what they tell me as they tell it to me. So most of the time when I'm writing, I don't even know how the story is unfolding and what twists it's gonna have. And I also discover them as I write. And the writing process is such an interesting for me that it's really difficult for me to even say that I deliberately wrote it this way, put this twist at this point, and knew that at that point this was what was going to happen. I just knew that I wanted to address a certain societal issue. I knew I wanted maybe to show a certain aspect of life, but I did not really know how I was going to manage that with the story. But once the story is out, it just feels and reads. It's so impressive to me. I mean, who has supposedly written it? Because I mean, I was the one who put down all those words and sentences and paragraphs. But I myself find myself surprised that, but where do I get these ideas and how did I know, to do it this way for this twist to happen here? I mean, it's really not anything deliberate. It just flows that way, and it's for every piece I've ever written. I have not. I do know and admire. There are some writers who can plan everything down to even the pages that they think, the number of pages that they think the story will be, or they know which at what chapter a certain thing will happen. For me, some of the things, like sometimes my chapters are only put in place after I've written story, when I'm going through it and then I'm editing it and then I'm structuring it. And the thing about it also with my writing is that even when it tells a story that is not linear, it comes out linear, like the back and forth, the memories back and coming forward, they'll all come to me in a chronological order. So yeah, that's what I can say. So all right, let me read the epilogue, and then we can finish the reading and discuss the remainder of this piece. Okay. I arrive in Ireland a week after the phone call from Zugo's sister. I made up my mind that I was not going to let my only child be put in his grave before I had met him. I wanted to know what quirks he had and who he resembled in my family. I obtained the address where they live as well as their home telephone number from Zizi. I was surprised that she did not fight me. It seemed she understood my need and right to see my son. I am grateful to her for that. The shuttle from the hotel is already there, and as I walk into the arrivals area, I spot the woman holding a placard with my name, poorly spelled, on it. I chose a hotel that was within walking distance of where they stay. They live in a suburb called Cabra West, which I was told is approximately 5 kilometers from the city. I plot my route to Kilala Road number 86 from the Marion Upper Street in the city center. After a nap of about 6 hours, I put on my comfortable attire and I head to Zugo's home. I'm following the route planner to the letter, and within 40 minutes, I'm facing a cluster of homes, and my eyes are darting about looking for number 86. Two teenage girls enter a cluster that has a black fence and a brown door. The buildings are pushed together such that they give an impression of being under pressure from both sides, where they are joined to another. It seems like such a humble home, nothing like my large property back home. It pains me to think that my son has all his life living like a sardine. Whose fault is that? A thought intrudes. It makes me contrite. Indeed, I have no right to complain about the living conditions when I did nothing to contribute to his life. I cannot see a number, and so I follow the girls because they look mixed, and I knock on the door of the house they have just disappeared into. Someone yells from inside for Caitlin to answer. As it opens, I spot one of the girls who had entered the house. She mumbles something I cannot make sense of. Someone from within asks her who it is, and she shouts back something that I guess to be that it is someone she does not know. Before long, Zugo is approaching the door. I can feel her more than I can see her. The girl disappears behind the door, and she appears. Shock registers on her face, and her eyes gloss over. I can see that she is becoming emotional. She does not greet me, but gestures for me to come in. I wonder where the husband is, when it is her who comes to the door to see about a stranger. I peruse the inside of the house without much interest. From the door is a small passage that leads to what looks like an open plan dining and sitting, and to the left at the end of the hall is the door to what appears to be a kitchen. From the brief view I had as I passed, she gestures for me to sit on the sofa. The girls from the street are watching television while sitting on the floor. Zugo is still composing herself. The younger girl goes to her and caresses her. She can sense that her mother is upset, and she looks at me with an evil eye. Who is this man, Mama? She says to her. She's more articulate than her sister. Zugo hugs her and whispers something in her ear. She reluctantly moves from her mother and approaches her sister. After some whispering, the sister gets up and they disappear up a staircase, which is located at the end of the lounge area. I'm sorry to show up unannounced like this, I say, and I wait to see if she's listening. She raises her hand to me and I decide to stop. I try to get up and go to her, to try and comfort her, but she sees my intention and waves her hand in a gesture that tells me to sit back down. I am feeling uncomfortable. What should I do? Sit here until when? I oblige her because I am the intruder in her home and she can always show me the door. I wonder about the woman I connected with back home when my nosy daughter had interrupted us. I guess she is gone. That woman still had hope. This woman is grieving her child. Her warmth then might have been inspired by the need she had then had for me to cooperate. I can't help but feel used and cheated. I am grieving someone I never met. My grief does not feel authentic. It is like I'm an imposter. As I sit there, sinking deeper into my misery, I hear the sound of a door opening, very faintly. The light from the open door is blocked by a large frame that appears dark until it approaches the room we are in. I notice that he has left the door open. Zugo sees him and almost runs to him. He embraces her and kisses her briefly. I cannot help but feel jealous. My thoughts move to images conjured by my mind of the two of them together, writhing, and suddenly my pants feel tight and my clothes feel claustrophobic. He is large and it makes me wonder where else he might also be better formed than me. I want to punch him. Finally, Zugo gains her voice and says, Angus, this is Zweli, Aiden's biological father. I resent that introduction. because I can tell that it is meant to diminish my fatherhood to my son for the sure in this man. He approaches me and I stand. He extends his hand and I push mine forward to meet his. The handshake is brief and awkward. I'm sorry for your loss, he says at length. I stammer an apology of my own for showing up at his home uninvited and unannounced. He extends his hospitality to me by saying I am more than welcome. Sit down, the two of them on the sofa where Zuko had been sitting, and I opposite them where I had been sitting. Now is as good a time as any to make my wishes known. I would like to sing Olisi, I say, using the name I know he might struggle to connect with my son. Indeed, he is puzzled for some moments before he remembers that Aiden has another name. Ah, yes, of course. He is at the mortuary. Would you like me to take you there? He offers courteously. If it's no trouble, otherwise you can tell me where the morgue is and I will make my way there. It's no trouble at all, he says with a half smile. The accent takes some getting used to. Have you met my girls? He asks. Aiden's sisters? He finishes off his question. I'm not sure how to answer this because I saw the girls, but they were not introduced to me. I think so, although I do not know their names. Ah, yes, Caitlin is the older one and Kiara is the baby. I can hear it in his voice that he dotes on the children. Lucky bastard. Those were supposed to be my children. Right then, shall we get going? Zuko makes a move to come with us, but Angus gently sets her down. It's all right, darling. Zwili and I will be fine. And he kisses her on the forehead as she docilely complies. I am puzzled by this side of Zuko. Is this how she is, or it is just grief that is making her act this way? Before I leave, I ask them if they have a photo of me that they can spare, and Angus leaves us for a moment to go and get one. I'm sorry, Zuko whispers from where she's sitting, hugging herself so tightly. As I am about to attempt approaching her to offer my comfort, her husband reappears with 2 photos and hands them to me. Those were his best. I got them from his room, he says. He leads the way to the door and I follow, reluctant to leave Zuko in the state she's in, but unable to voice my objections. As he is about to close the door, he calls the children to come down and keep their mother company. The funeral will be the day after tomorrow, I hear, so I am just in time. A few more days and I would not have been able to see him, he says. There is a small blue car parked inside the little yard, which was not there when I arrived. He invites me to get in and we drive to the mortuary, which is in the city. We get there and he speaks to the reception, and then we are led to the freezers. I get shivers thinking about my son lying in a refrigerator. He might as well be a piece of meat. They open the tray, and there he is. He is still naked. I guess they will only dress him on the day of his funeral. He is quite tall and skinny. His face looks gaunt, and I can't really reconcile the features on the photos with the ones I am seeing now. He has also darkened a lot. He looks peaceful, like he is sleeping. I stifle the urge to hurl. I can feel the bile rising in me, and I realize that I will lose the battle. I ask for the restroom, and I almost run in the direction pointed. I approach the sink, and stuff just comes out of me, most of it liquid. I have not had anything to eat in 2 days. I rinse my mouth, and then I splash water on my face. The tears are burning my throat and the back of my eyes. I don't really know what I was expecting. That I might get here and find that it was a mistake. That I might notice that he is breathing while everybody else had failed to notice it. that my showing up would raise him from the dead? I have a hard time reining emotions, but when another man enters the restroom, I decide to leave. I want to return to the hotel so I can lick my wounds. I take out the photos from my breast pocket and I look at them, trying to bring the still form to life. When I get back to the storage room, I find them gone. For a moment, I'm not sure what to do. Then I decide to go back to the reception and I find Angus waiting for me there. Are you alright, man? He asks, and somehow I don't want his sympathy. But I cannot act like a child. He has been nothing but kind and courteous. I tell him am, that I am tired and hungry, so I want to return to the hotel. He offers to take me, and I tell him the name. On our way there, I ask him where the funeral will be and what time it will start. He opens the cubbyhole and pulls out a brochure and a program. Silence reigns after that. When I get to the hotel, I thank him for his hospitality and assure him that I will see him at the funeral. Drives off, I enter the hotel and head straight for my room. I will take a shower and then I will see about getting some food. I am glad to be in a foreign land, away from prying eyes and carrying questions. I will mourn my son, and come the day of the funeral, I shall be complete. And that is the end of story. So yeah, thank you. That's the end of Grief or Regret. Any thoughts? Sohang, how's Matiki? Anybody else in the space who wants to request? Okay, I've just approved 2 people.
Ostumelo?
So, yes.
Yeah, no, obviously there's nothing to add. That is just a perfect piece of writing. So add anything or remove from that, but just say thank you very much for this great writing and a great reading. I would like to listen more in the near future, and also obviously grab an opportunity to buy one of your books, if not 2 or 3, which I think I should for my daughter, because you do write also for children's books as well. So yeah, it's really quite amazing, and I am glad that I am here and I got an opportunity to listen to you, well as I mean, it's quite a, like I said, it's time well spent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Soha. Okay, I was Matiki, Nomatamsanga and Maidi. I'll come to you guys after because I would like to also ask you guys to share a little bit of yourselves with the listeners by telling us about your brief reading history. I mean, when you started reading. I know Nomatemba, you've shared that before, but probably not with the people who are in the space. So it's always nice to hear how people adopted reading and stuff. So yes, Asmatiki, let's hear from you.
Can I'll pass for now and I give the new speakers an opportunity. I don't mind.
All right, okay. Noma Tamsan, hello, how are you? Please tell my listeners and me again about you as a reader.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Oh, Dumel, I was hoping you would not ask that question again, but yeah, here we are. Well, I started reading in high school, but I was not much of a reader like I am now. So this year I just sort of rekindled my love for reading after I discovered that there's a lot of underrated African writers, female writers for that matter, not just African, but female writers that one has not been exposed to. So yeah, I happened to stumble upon Tumelo's books on the timeline, and I thought, let me just give this woman a chance. And yeah, since then I've just been hooked on her writing. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Coming to today's reading, I would like to echo Bai Black's sentiments of gratitude for just allowing us to freely eat off your table of thoughts. And as I was listening to the story, I thought to myself, what a wasted opportunity. But then again, you think of the complex medical condition that this man had, and you're like, is it really possible that he could be the father? I guess in a way he was justified to just dismiss it as, ah, this one is just passing me a handsball. But as fate would have it, he was the father. And I just loved the twist and the turns. Like Ausmatic, I was hoping that it would turn some other way, that one of the daughters would be a match and they would be flying to Ireland and living happily ever after as a family. But knowing Tumelo, she just had to burst our bubble and like, nah, he's dead. End of, cut, full stop. And yeah, that was it. That's a rather beautiful short story. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for inviting us. Keep on writing. I'm looking forward to more of your stories. Yeah, I'm still not happy about the Her Heart series. It feels incomplete. You know, I've told you that that series feels incomplete, but yeah, thank you.
Yes, I know you and I have a bone to pick about that, but you are definitely one of my most favorite readers because you don't just read, you come and talk to me about it. You tell me your basically your how you feel and your dissatisfaction where possible. So I like that because it allows me to just interact with you and to also get a glimpse of how you are doing and how you are enjoying the story. So thank you so much. I'm not sure what's happening with Maidi. She seemed to either have lost her speaker mic and was trying to request again, but for some reason the application doesn't seem to want to respond. Oh, okay, no, now it has. Maidi, can you hear me? All right.
Or it's just my phone just acting up. But yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Okay. Also, welcome to the space. Thank you so much for requesting the mic. Please tell us about you as a reader. When and how did you fall in love with reading? And then you can questions or make your comments. Thank you.
Well, Galabo Ratimelo, but I didn't really want to speak about myself because I'm not really a reader. I do buy books, and I don't really read them that much. But whenever I get a chance ya go reka buka ya anyone wa motho o montsho ka mora bo rena, I do buy. I have few books sorry. There's a guy Udula somewhere in Soshanguve by the name of Leroy Tau. I've bought some of his books, and I think I'm only left with one of them. My friends took them. So I'm not really much of a reader. I'm more of a collector of the Wuga by Talani. And I buy books for my kids as well. And whenever I get a chance, I read for them. But the eldest one knows how to read. So once in a while, she would take the books and read. So ke no tla mo godimo mo actually to just say thank you for nako ye o e creatileng or created yona gore o kgone o kgona go share le rena talente Modimo a o fileng yona, or badimo ba geno ba o fileng yona. It's beautiful. Sure, my voice is, yeah. So like stories are how say, like it's relatable. It's like the things that we actually go through in a daily basis, or that we see other people well running through them, and it's like it's very relatable. You keep us in suspense, hey, like re fela pelo ya go tseba gore what's gonna happen next, like yo, our Hashem, and I hope it's not the last time you do things like this. Or there are something else on the, I hope we could even if it's just once a week or once a month. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And I just wanted to say thank you, like Galavoha. Maybe I'll probably start reading the books that I'm collecting right now, right, Lalohanya, and because of you, I think I would start doing that and stop just buying them. Ke di beya ka mo di-shelf-ong ke sa di bale. Wa e bona? So ke a leboga Dumela.
Thank you, Mighty. That pleases me so much to know that I have somehow managed to pique your interest enough to now want to do more than just collecting the books, that you will read them as well. And so that will lead you to consuming more and more of the literature that we produce locally. So really I'm grateful that I have been able to be with you guys today and just share with you one of my works. And I I feel sometimes I do feel like writing is a gift to me, but other times I feel like an imposter. I feel like maybe it comes way too easy, because probably of all the things related to the book, and like everything else, like publishing it and then selling it, those are the most difficult parts for me. The writing itself comes pretty easily, and so I probably look or seem like I'm very prolific as a writer, because I've got so many manuscripts that I've written and completed, and I'm just waiting for funds to be able to publish them. So I can, like, I mean, I have a lot of books now published, over the years, but I've had more if I guess money was not a factor. So I do enjoy sharing these stories, and just listening to the feedback, how people experience them when they read or listen to them being read. And I'm definitely very humbled and touched by you guys just taking time out of your day to give me a chance to entertain you, and see if actually I have, and to know that I have entertained you, that I have really brought something of value that's worthwhile, that you want to experience again, is very encouraging. It is like the wind beneath my wings. So it really does give me flight, and it gives me encouragement to write more stories. I write for children, I write for teenagers, and I write for adults, and I write in Sesotho, and I also write in English. And as much as I attempt to write in languages, um, I guess I do not feel confident enough to say I've written the books in those languages. I'd rather say they were translated to that language. But yes, I'm very much happy to actually be able to do this with my life, to impact the story of the African child, to help children in Africa fall in love with reading, because they get to read stories that resonate with them, stories that they can see themselves in, stories that speak about things that are familiar to them. So thank you very much for your feedback, and yes, for wanting to read, and I really please if you can just share on the TL, or you can inbox me of that author you said whose books you had, but unfortunately some people stole and left you with one copy. So I want to check them out and see if maybe it's any of the authors that I know in my circles, or if it's someone new that I need to just check out and find out how they're doing. Because I like to be able to be of service to other South African writers, because it is really a struggle in the space. So we need to help each other, reach markets, because reading doesn't have a monopoly. We may write, maybe let's say, the story that talks about the same things, but our voices are not the same. So the same reader can enjoy both our books telling similar stories, simply because we won't tell them in the same way. So there is no competition. What's most important is getting our people excited about reading our stories, and just enjoying and developing those comprehension skills, and developing their imaginations, and just growing their language skills, and loving it, and one day being able to serve themselves with all that reading has managed to develop within them. So yeah, thank you. Ausmatic.
Yo, ke bile ke kgathetse ho bua Sekgowa, ke batla Sesotho. Anyway, being courteous. Naturally, this is so inspiring. And for me, I guess, you being a woman, and a Mosotho woman for that matter, it goes a long way back while I was in primary. You probably know Dr. Masechile Khaketla, who is one of the most prolific Sesotho writers, be it poetry, novels. When I said at the age of 10, now I do remember where that was coming from, because we had a set book that was called Bopaki ba Monkhane, probably 11 pages, very, very short. And that book, the ending rather of that book, because funnily I don't even remember the beginning of the book, but I do remember the ending of the book like I had just read it yesterday. It's about a woman, a young married couple, and they can't have children. And of course, the woman would, ordinarily be seen as the culprit to being not having the ability to bear children. And the young wife makes a decision to test the thesis outside. Not because I think it was written for children, not in a very, very, very subtly. I don't know how many of my classmates understood that. But, the ending of the book, it ends with this woman going back home, or coming back home with, what is it called? Monkhane, the Monkhane, the blackjack, sticking behind her back, behind her head. And one of the aunts, acknowledges that, okay, I see what you've done. And it leaves with an assumption that this young woman actually later had a child, not of her husband, but of whatever. So that stuck in my head. And it's one of my first readings that really, for these decades that I've been a human being, It's stuck in my head, and I have followed Mema Sechile throughout her writings. And what saddens me more than anything is that when it comes to African women, no matter how prolific they are in their writing, they are not acknowledged. I will say this because let us take, for instance, Ndate Thomas Mofulo, who wrote this beautiful book. You probably know about it, Chaka. And he literally rose to stardom because of that book. The original copy of the book was not quite accepted by Morija publishers, because they felt like he was throwing the white culture under the bus, or rather he was being too explicit about, who Chaka was, and they didn't like that. So it had to go through quite a number of editorials until it was finally published. But I digress. What I wanted to really emphasize was that Mema remains one of the most prolific writers in the Sesotho realm. And I see you. You may be in South Africa, be South African, but to me you are just as any Mosotho as they come by. And I sit here thinking, are we going to lose another one? Are we going to have another Mosotho woman who will just disappear to the rubble of male noise, where men are acknowledged more than women do? I have seen your books, and if you remember, when I saw you, I got so excited because somebody told me about you, and then I saw you here on Twitter, and I was like, oh my goodness, that was you. I think I saw a copy on Amazon, but I like having hard copies. I don't like soft copies. They and I got so excited that, oh, okay, she's on Amazon, but I would still want to have a conversation with Metume. So for me, this is a proposal from me to say I don't know much, I don't have much. But the way you write, I think it might inspire a whole lot of young people out there, even children themselves. So my proposal to you is very simple. If and when you can come to Lesotho, I am offering that we will travel to schools at my own expense for you to have an interaction with children at schools so that they see that it is possible. For you to inspire young women who would love to write. I should have been that young woman, but I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anyone to guide me. I'm a good storyteller, though. That's what people tell me. And a German friend of mine bought me the leather-bound notebook to say, you know what, I've been in Lesotho for almost 2 years, and the stories that I have heard from you, you have to start writing. I was in Kenya a few years ago, and a mentor of mine who is just as good as you, who is a writer, took me aside to say, why have you not written anything? A few days ago, another person asked me the same thing. I don't know why I have not written anything. I think the imposter syndrome, as you said, I have never felt like I was good enough to do that. I do write well when I put myself to it, but I would not want other girls to be a wasted product like I am. I'm okay, actually. I have no regrets in that department, but I've done other things that I like. Maybe other than writing. Yes, so this is an offer that I'm putting to you. I don't know if you have followed, there is a UNESCO opportunity. Maybe we can talk about that on the side. In terms of support, I will share the link with you. We can go through it and see what is it that you might be interested in that opportunity. But other than that, I think you just inspired something in me that has been dead for a very long time. I don't promise anyone that I'll write any book, but I can definitely make it possible for other young people because we need to be doing it for the next generation. And I would hate it if I want you to be who is this Nigerian woman? Yes, the Nigerian.
Chimamanda.
Yes, Chimamanda. I wanted to be our Tumelo in Southern Africa. I mean, I get so jealous sometimes with these Nigerians looking like they're the best. They are the best, actually. I'll not downgrade them. But I think you belong there. You really do belong there. And we need to do everything in our power, everything in our efforts to lift each other and make us happen. So thank you very much. The last piece saddened me a bit, but I wasn't surprised since you dragged me through the other one. I guess I can now get attuned to your sad spirit. So I did enjoy it. Sad, but still enjoyable to see a human being going through such pain. I don't blame him. It's just how life was designed for him. So thank you very much for your time and giving your time freely. I mean, for other people who would be paying to get into this space to listen to such a beautiful reading. So thank you very much, Chulu. We really do appreciate your time. We appreciate that you can actually, just give yourself like this. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, we will discuss further, especially in relation to what we'd already discussed earlier about how then you can get the paperbacks. So perhaps, with your proposal, I just need to find a time when I can do it, and then I can I guess arrange it, because I would definitely want to come and just inspire the little people, because I know most of Lesotho, it has like bana baya skolong under the conditions that are probably still similar to the conditions that prevailed when I was going to school many dog years ago, with very little and stuff like that. And just being able to see that someone can come from the same place that they do and can be able to do more than just consume books, because I know as a child I didn't think ordinary people like myself wrote or produced books. So I was just consuming them, and writing sort of came to me kind of like as a surprise, because it wasn't something I had planned to do or something that I thought I was going to do. I would just write stuff out of playing, not thinking that it's going to be to become anything. So it's just that I guess maybe reading a lot does eventually culminate in you writing something one day. From all that reading, you develop probably the ability to think and write creatively, because you are constantly exposed to the art of telling a story, because I guess anybody maybe can go and tell you what happened somewhere, but how it's packaged, I guess it's going to depend on the art form that is being used. So I really, really appreciate the support. I appreciate that offer, and we will definitely discuss it further. You and I am so excited because I do want to meet you. I realize that I'm very much partial to Sesotho le Basotho, most probably because being here in Gauteng, only my home do I hear Sesotho probably regularly. Otherwise, it's just English and maybe some other languages. So whenever Kilimo Ibang Sesotho is spoken, just hearing those sounds, it just does something in my spirit, to which I really don't know how to explain, which is why I want to preserve the language, why I want to write in Sesotho, and why I'm basically doing what I can to make sure that whether or not it's lucrative, writing and publishing books in Sesotho, that I will use the English to generate the funds to support and finance the publishing of Sesotho stories. Yes, thank you so very much. And I will have another space next week. I think I will probably have it around the same time where I will share another short story. I'll try and get maybe an upbeat one next time so that I'm not always making you guys sad and cry. Just find one that is a little bit on the lighter side and has sort of a less dreary ending, and we will enjoy ourselves. So I don't know if anybody else in the space would like a chance to say something. Opening the invitation now to you to do so. Failing which, then I will just get, I guess, parting thoughts from the current speakers and close the space. So the offer is going once, it's going twice. Okay, so I have not received any requests, and so that means we are concluding the space. If Maidi, would you like to say something as a closing? And then afterwards, Noma Tamsanga, you can also say something, and then we can just power down the space. Thank you.
Tumelo, a ke na anything e nka e bolelang. I think nna le wena re tla bolela ko di-DM because I think I should get a book or two for the kids. Like I said, now I collect for the kids, not for me. So I think ke tla bolela le wena ko di-DM so I can get a book or two for the kids. For now, I think I went through your blog as well, so I can see that you wrote some of them there. So I'll probably go through your blog and then get
All right. No, who's that?
but now you're not DM, it's fine.
That's perfect. Thank you. Noma Tamsanga.
Okay.
Thank you, Camilla. Nothing much from my side. Just thank you again, and maybe hoping that you will soon convert you into a reader. One of these days.
Yes, no, hopefully the blog will
One of these days.
All right. No, guys, you must enjoy the rest of your afternoon and what's remaining of the weekend, and have a productive week next week. Thank you so much for joining the space, and